WNST Towson Fenway Park this weekend. Luke Jones is on the back fields up in Owings Mills all week as well, getting ready for a little bit of fake football. Feels fake to the fans. It's very, very real to the coaches and to the players, especially guys trying to make a team. This guy knows all about that as a former 10th round NFL draft pick that lasted 8 years, played in some big games up there in Buffalo, was born in Pittsburgh but went to Buffalo and hadn't left up there. He's been doing Bills radio for a dozen years after a real nice career in the National Football League. We welcome back one of our defending champions, Mark Kelso, live from Buffalo and the Bills Radio Network to talk about all things. Always important third preseason game here, Mark, but for our purposes here, it's kind of weird. We're not playing with our starting quarterback. We're trying to figure so much out offensively, and I know the Bills are just trying to line up right now, right?
Yeah, just trying to line up, and the Cordy Glenn injury has not been a favorable situation that's unfolded here in the preseason, and then Chantrell Henderson is coming back from some health issues that he's had to deal with a little bit, and that experiment at left tackle has been interesting in the preseason here, and I mean, I think Chantrell has had some good snaps, but I think it's apparent that with real elite pass rushers that he may not be quite ready to handle that left side, and they'll need to put a tight end over there, or maybe they'll want to use Deion Dawkins, the young draft pick out of Temple University, and he's been playing on the right side and substituting in for Jordan Mills, but he may have to play on the left side if Cordy Glenn's not available for opening week, but it's an interesting time in the NFL, and you're right. It's a different mentality between veteran players and rookie players. There's a lot of young players that are extremely talented, had terrific collegiate careers, and are just expending every ounce of energy they have to try to make a 53-man roster. And then you have a lot of veteran players who want to put together some good snaps, but quite honestly, they want the preseason to be over as quick as possible and get to week one healthy.
Well, all you have to do is see that Odell Beckham play on Monday night, and that's every team's worst nightmare. It's the league's worst nightmare. I mean, yeah, and look, we're trying to get Flacco just standing upright on the 10th of September, and you see all these injuries, and you've had them in your camp. We've had so many of them in our camp. And then you have the Bolden walking away from you guys and Ursha walking away down here. I mean, you know, it feels like every roster out there are 3 or 4 spaces that when everything's warm and fuzzy and we're in Philadelphia and we're drafting players and guys are rehabbing and we're drafting rookies that, you know, you think you got your 22 out there and you look up and you're like, well, we're down to 18 and geez, it's not even Labor Day for crying out loud, right?
Yeah, and it's you know, one of the things you talk about a coaching staff when a new staff comes in, like has what happened in Buffalo here in the off season, is how do you develop continuity on a club? Well, one way you develop continuity is not to have 23 or 24 new guys on an annual basis, and you've got to find the guys that you want to construct your team with and create a foundation, and hopefully you have an opportunity to play alongside those same guys for a number of years, because the longer you play beside those guys, I mean, you develop relationships off the field as well, which just strengthens your on-field performance, I think, and you learn how to play together. I mean, guys have different strengths and weaknesses, and as a unit, you know, as a defensive unit particularly, you can compensate for areas of strength and weaknesses throughout your defense so that you can put together a really good defensive package on a weekly basis. So, I mean, you have to spend time together. You have to develop together. You have to understand what the mindset is of the guy playing beside you. And a lot of that happens in camp, but it happens, again, with just guys that are in the building for a length of time and guys that are being developed, not coming into the league thinking they know everything there is to know about playing the game of football, but coaching staffs to continue to develop guys throughout their NFL career.
You know, Mark, hearing that from you, it means a lot because, I mean, you're one of those guys that came into a system with all the same guys. And look, we won 2 championships here in Baltimore, and it was pretty much with a group of guys that had been battle-tested and had been through it. I mean, Flacco was into his 5th year, you know, by the time we won the second time around. Same thing with Ray Lewis and the Peter Boulwares and those guys that first time around and the Gooses. You know, you really went through that. I mean, you're one of those guys, if you were in Buffalo the first year, in Kansas City lasted next year in Cleveland, and that, you might not have lasted in the league that long because it's harder to do it that way as a player. It's certainly harder to do it that way as a team. And when you see the success of the Patriots or the Steelers or the Packers at this point, it really does say that there is a system, there's a way to do it, and part of that is having that core group of guys that you're not shuttling guys in and out every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a well-built building. I mean, you've got a really nice structure, and maybe it's a brick structure, but the mortar in between, you're going to change a little bit, and you're going to continue to update to keep it strong. But the foundation is going to be something that's created through the culture and created through a core group of players that understand how to play together, understand what they need to do to compete on a weekly basis and actually on a daily basis, to understanding what they need to do in the film room, what they need to do on the practice field in order to prepare themselves for game day. And I do believe in continuity, and I believe in, Coach McDermott made a comment that people have kind of gravitated to in the last couple of weeks, where he said, we're not trying to accumulate talent, we're trying to build a team. And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, you need to accumulate a lot of talent, but talent, really good talent, without great teamwork can win in the short term, but it cannot be a consistent winner over the long term. You've got to have the right culture. You've got to have the right guys. And you've got to function as a team. And I think Baltimore does a really nice job of that in trying to focus on a team. Guys make sure that their mindset is of, I'm going to do whatever I can do to help this team survive and strive and thrive. And then let's see what happens on the field. And I think they've been able to accomplish that in recent years. It's been a little bit more difficult with free agency and the fact that Flacco hasn't been as healthy as he was earlier in his career. And sometimes you have a good running game. Sometimes the running game goes away a little bit. And it doesn't matter what quarterback you have in the league. Whether it's Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, or Flacco, or Tyrod Taylor. You need a good running game if you're going to have an effective passing game, because they complement each other so well. So I like to do it the old-fashioned way, and I think teams that do it that way have an opportunity to be successful on a consistent basis. Doesn't guarantee it, but I think it presents the best opportunity for long-term success.
Even though he is a Pittsburgh guy, he's not a bad guy. He's Mark Kelsey. We have that whole Pittsburgh-Baltimore thing going on, Danny. You know that, Mark, right?
There's a rivalry there?
Just a little bit, man. I know you've watched that on Christmas night every year for the last however many years. But
right.
I think the weirdest part, and look, I'm a baseball fan down here, and with everyone in Buffalo, I'll bring this up this week. It's very, very hard being an Oriole fan here for those 15 years watching the Yankees and Red Sox, and we're about to go through that again. At least it feels that way. The Patriots have been on this thing for the whole century, where whether you're in Buffalo or you're a Jets fan or you're a Dolphins fan, we played the Dolphins and talked to them last week. That's a heck of a thing where you look up and you're like, well, I know they're good for 12 or 13 this year. And, we sort of feel that way a little bit about Pittsburgh this year. But, I think that the hardest thing is 17 years into this, you can't have continuity when you don't win, and you can only take the bleeding so long. And there's been coaching changes there. And I know before Mr. Wilson passed there was a lot of continuity is what the whole organization was about. But there's a new everything going on there, and they're trying to figure it out. And this whole Rex McDermott transition is really about some sort of stability that you're trying to enact there. And in McDermott, tell me what we've got in him, because he certainly comes from the right stock, right? He checks all the boxes for sure.
Well, he's a William & Mary kid, and he's a Pennsylvania guy. So, I mean, those two boxes are checked, right? But I think there was a different mentality. It seemed to me, and I had a lot of conversations with Rex, and really he was very open and kind of wore his heart on his sleeve, and an outstanding football mind. And I think his mentality was, we want to win now, and we want to get to the playoffs right away. And I think this mentality with Coach McDermott and the staff he has assembled is more about, we want to win for the long term, and people don't like to hear that, because sometimes that means that you're stockpiling draft picks, which is one of the things the Bills are doing, and you're trying to bring in young talent. Certainly when you have a new staff, you're going to bring in guys when you feel like there's positions of need. You're going to bring in guys that you have had experience with at previous clubs, guys that have the right work ethic, the right cultural mindset to develop the way you foresee the club developing. So, I mean, Sean's got a lot of things in his head. I think I've been around some really great coaches in Coach Johnson and Coach Reed and Coach Rivera, and certainly probably has some type of playbook together in his head or on paper perhaps of ways that he would like to utilize the excellence that those guys, his mentors, were able to proliferate, but at the same time put his own spin on it. I think building a culture is really important to him. Developing a network of strong relationships within the team is really important to him, and I think he wants to be simple and execute simple principles in a really efficient manner. And if they do those things, I think they'll have a chance to be really competitive this year. How many games they're going to win, it's hard for me to tell, because I'm just trying to see how the off season or the preseason is unfolding here, and some of the things they're going to try to do to try to maintain the outstanding running game they've had the last couple of years, and complement that with probably a short and intermediate passing game now with the loss of Sammy Watkins, and I don't know if they have the real ability to stretch the field vertically now. I mean, Zay Jones probably can work himself into that role, but that's a tough task to ask a young receiver to fulfill that role initially in his career, and he's developed well through training camp and seems to be competitive and have a team mindset, but just have to see how those things unfold. And then, a lot of uncertainty with what's been happening with the Anquan Bolden situation, and that kind of threw everybody for a surprise, as did the trades last week. And then you've got guys on the defensive side of the ball, and Marcel Darius, who's an outstanding player, but needs to play to his level of capability. If he does, he's a dominant player in this league on the defensive line, and between he and Kyle Williams, they can create some real problems for opposing offensive quarterbacks if in fact they're playing at their best level and are healthy. So we'll see how it unfolds. I mean, I like what I've seen so far, but I don't know Coach McDermott particularly well. Spent a little bit of time with him and enjoyed the time we spent together. Like the model that he seems to be setting forth as the foundation for the strength of this organization in the short term here. And let's see if he can put together the right players to have some early success.
He is Mark Kelso. He covers all things Bills and, of course, played for some of those legendary Bills teams back around the turn of the century. He's been with the Bills broadcast crew now for a dozen years up there on the Bills radio network and getting ready for this weekend. You talk about Bolden. In a lot of organizations, this would be a 30 receiver, and we certainly counted on Steve Smith here the last couple of years. And, having been around that, and Mason and some of the guys into their 30s at the end of their career trying to play that position. Brandon Stokely came in here for a cup of coffee again a couple of years ago as well. It's a difficult thing, but Bolden was going to bring not only those 60-some-odd receptions that he had in Detroit last year and sort of that tough third down yards and all of that, but probably some leadership there on an offense that, probably otherwise could use some more veterans, especially in that room, right?
Well, he brought a couple things with him. I mean, he brought a work ethic that you're not going to achieve the results that he has achieved throughout the length of his career if you don't have a good work ethic and if you don't have good study habits. He brought some toughness in that slot position if, in fact, he would have been in there. And I think he could muscle some smaller nickel cornerbacks in certain situations. He catches balls in tight spaces, so he didn't need a lot of separation. And anybody who's in his 14th year is going to slow down a little bit. But he was able to position his body and make catches in tight spaces, which he's demonstrated here over the years. And then I think he's a really effective blocker as a wide receiver. And you cannot have a really solid running game in the NFL unless you have willing and functional blockers at the wide receiver position, guys that are willing to stick their nose in there and make sure that they seal off a linebacker or a defensive back, whatever the case may be in certain situations. So I think he brought a lot of things to the table, and then his leadership and perhaps mentorship of the young guys that the Bills had on their receiving core, and that kind of goes out the window now. And again, I imagine it was a difficult decision. And the decision just to come back and play is difficult because when you've been in this game for that length of time, I mean, you certainly have nicks and it's a lot of mental and physical preparation and just exhaustion throughout the course of the season to make sure you're playing at the level that you believe you're capable of playing. And for Anquan Bolden, I mean, I read an article yesterday about how he was one of the toughest players, but perhaps not a Hall of Famer. In my book, he's a Hall of Famer because of his toughness and because of the numbers that he was able to put up. So you just expend an awful lot of mental and physical energy in those situations, and maybe he looked at that and said, I don't know if I'm willing to climb that mountain this year, and apparently that's what he did say. And hopefully the Bills will be able to supplant that situation with guys they have on the roster already. I know they do have some good young guys that they had last year that have an opportunity now to take up the void that Anquan Bolden's departure has left.
Mark Kelso joining us here from the Bills Radio Network, getting us ready for a Saturday night in what feels like fake football to us, but feels real to a lot of guys. And look, both of these teams have real roster spots here. You know, there are 8, 10, 12 guys in both of these locker rooms that are going to go out there and fight for 3, 4, 5 jobs. And if not, a spot on the Browns or the 49ers or somewhere down the street. And, this is bright lights for the guys out there cracking it in the third and fourth quarters, even though the fans sort of yawn through this thing, Mark.
Yeah, it's meaningless, but it's important. So I don't know how those two, that's kind of an oxymoron, right?
But
so
you were one of the guys
important.
that this really was important for. This was everything for you. It's how you got your job and made your name, right?
Well, and you put together, when I was playing, they only kept 8 defensive backs in Philadelphia that year, and then I had Wes Hopkins and Ray Ellis and Roynell Young and Andre Waters. I had like 5 Pro Bowls on one defensive backfield unit. But you had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to play significantly in the preseason, and then you put some good film out there, and then teams that are looking for guys in certain positions are able to see that, and then you might present yourself another opportunity. So that's the thing that's most fun for me in the preseason. It's not about looking at the scheme. It's not about seeing how the whole unit plays, quite frankly, because I do think there's an edge to veteran players that may be non-existent in the preseason, but certainly exist in the regular season. Maybe a little different with a new coaching staff because you're trying to prove themselves to them as well. But certainly with guys that have the same coaching staff, they're just looking to get to opening day healthy. And so what I like to watch is just these young players just focus on one guy or one in a particular play, or focus on somebody on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball, because they're expending every ounce of energy they have to try to make a play, to make a roster. And they may have 8 or 9 opportunities throughout the course of the game. If they make 5 or 6 of them, they stick. If they make 4 or 5, they're kind of on a balance beam. And if they make 3, they're probably not going to stick. But can they get on a practice squad? Can they show some good promise so that somebody else with a position of need, and maybe the club that they're on does not have their position is not a position of need for that club, so maybe they have an opportunity to hang on with somebody else. But it's a dream that they've had since they were kids, and they're going to expend an awful lot of energy to try to achieve that dream. So it's fun, and it is. The games are meaningless, but they're important in preparation for those guys that are trying to make a roster and for the opening day.
It is weird. I look up and down the depth chart and the coaches. A lot of guys have purple in their chest somewhere back at home. Rick Dennison, Leslie Frazier, Vlad Ducasse, but no one more so than Tyrod Taylor, right? And, a guy that I didn't get a chance to talk to a lot on the radio during his time here. He was the backup quarterback, but a guy that I talked to a lot in the locker room, and now that he's become a Bill, he stopped over and visited with us for 30 minutes at the Super Bowl in Houston after being the Pro Bowl guy, and we're kidding him, and I saw him here. He was in town for Torrey Smith's basketball game back here in the springtime. He's a classy guy, and I root for Tyrod. So, and I know he's sort of much maligned as not a top 10 quarterback in the league or whatever, and I know he took a little bit of a pay cut to play there, but I like Tyrod Taylor, and I root for Tyrod Taylor. I don't know that he's ever going to win 13 games in this league, or he's ever going to have that kind of talent around him, but I know he's getting another opportunity there for another year to go out and prove himself this year.
Yeah, and I would agree. I root for him. I like him. He's got outstanding leadership skills. He has tremendous athleticism. He's got some improvisational ability. He throws a really good ball, tight spiral. He's accurate with his ball. He has a little bit of trouble in the middle of the field because of his lack of size, and you just got to find ways to construct the offense to deal with that system or that situation, and play to your skill set strengths as opposed to trying to make your weaknesses better. Don't worry about making your weaknesses better, I think, because you're not going to be great, ever be great in your weakness. You can compensate for them, but you're going to be great when you use your strengths. So use those strengths and get them out on the edge and let them run and let them bootleg. And if you complement that with a good running game, I think you can win an awful lot of games. And again, I think his leadership skills are off the charts. He makes guys around him better. He talks about the team all the time, and whatever he can do to make the team better is what he's going to do. So from that perspective, you have everything you want, and if he was 6'4", we wouldn't be talking about this, because he would be that guy that you felt could win 12 or 13 or 14 games. But that creates an issue for them, and they've got to find a way to overcome that situation. And if they can do that and complement that with a good running game, I think last year they could have won 3 or 4 more games had the defense kind of held up their end of the bargain, but did not play to the capability level of the guys that they had on the field, I don't think, on a weekly basis. So, and that showed in the win-loss column at the end of the year. So I think he got some good tutelage from Flacco when he was there in Baltimore. We love Leslie Frazier, and he seems like a guy who's he's very calculated in what he does. He's careful about the way he talks. He's just got a great demeanor about him, and trying to teach these guys. And I really think in camp this year at Fisher, and now back in Orchard Park at New Era Field, I think that they're really trying to teach these guys. And sometimes I think the NFL game denigrates sometimes into more schematic things and executing schematic as opposed to developing skills and just really executing just great skills. And I think this group seems like they want to teach these guys how to execute the skills that they have, help them to grow and help them to play at the highest level that they possibly can with the most efficiency. And if that happens, then you have a chance to win. And if it doesn't, then, like I said, then we'll see what happens as the year unfolds. But it should be fun to watch. There's no question.
Well, both these teams are a little bit of a mixed pot right now, so we'll see what happens on Saturday night. Mark, it's always a pleasure to visit with you, man. Loved your playing career. Really appreciate you always making some time to get together. Go eat some wings and some beef on weck and do all of that Western Tonawanda, Buffalo thing for me, all right?
There's nothing better than chicken wings and a beef on weck, that's for sure. And then this guy, you got to say hi to the longest. I mean, she might be the longest orthopedic surgeon tenured in the NFL, in Dr. Curl. Do you know Dr. Curl?
I know Leanne very well. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Leanne was an outstanding high school basketball and softball player, won a couple of state championships in softball.
And you know what? She's too humble to ever brag on that. So
yeah.
You're going to brag on it.
The reason I bring it up is because we were high school classmates.
Well, the next time I see her, I will tell her that Mark Kelso was saying wonderful things about her incredible athletic prowess back in high school.
Absolutely, and she's done a lot of good things with Baltimore and keeping those guys healthy. So it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Hey, always a pleasure. Mark Kelso giving a plug to Leanne Curl and the medical team out there. Hey, I tell you what, and I wrote about this last week when my mom was struggling for her life. Doctors, nurses, special people, the most special people. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So good shout out. Good on you, Mark Kelso, who also stays off of social media. So you can't find him on Twitter. You won't find him on Facebook, but you can find his playing career up there at Football Reference, and you can hear him on the Buffalo Bills radio network. Mark Kelso, not a bad guy for being a Pittsburgh. All these Pittsburgh guys, they all come on, all of them, and they appoint themselves so well, whether it's Charlie Batch or even the adopted types like Mike Tomlin, who's really a Virginia guy in all that black and gold. But, it's horrible to be old and starting to like Pittsburgh people. It's terrible. Even Marvin Lewis. Johnny U. I should be careful around here. We talk bad about the Pittsburgh people. They bring good food, I'll tell you that. Bad beer, though. Bad beer. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be, anywhere in the world. We're going to be over in London next month, Wembley, Saturday. We're doing the cable car on the Air Emirates. We're doing a little march. We'll be at the Fox at XL all afternoon on Saturday, then a big event over to the O2 Arena. I did it last month. I previewed it. I promise you'll be happy you came and spent Saturday afternoon with us, especially if the weather's good, although I cannot promise that. It's sort of like the eclipse this week. I have no idea. bad weather would screw things up. We'll just drink more and get on the tube. But we'll figure that out when we get over to London. I'm thinking we're going to get good weather. I have good vibes about London and the Ravens and the Jaguars. Hope you're joining us. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, all those places Mark Kelser's not, including streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 in WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.